Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do the beer stuff here, and a little bit more Oddbird up in this piece in the form of their Catbird IPA. This one also comes courtesy of Keith from 93 Lumber. He sent off, or dropped off, two beers, their Mexican lager, which I'll probably throw up at the same time I throw this one. And I'm pumped about this because I dig me some Oddbird. They're a fun little brewery down in Stockton, New Jersey, in between like New Hope, PA, and Easton, PA, but on the Jersey side of things. And I dig on their beers. I've had this beer, but I haven't reviewed it. I had it at the brewery on draft. Actually, when I had it on draft, full disclosure, I think I didn't like it. Because I think I had two IPAs that day, and I was like, I'll get the other one. And I think I got that one and reviewed that one instead. I think it was their New Hope IPA. Just started doing cans. Let's have at it. Catbird IPA, 6.9%, done and done. Label is very similar to the Mexican lager. Coloration is different. Obviously, the gold foil is different, but I dig on it. I still can't think of Hermit Thrush, actually. If you go watch my other review, I was like, it kind of reminds me, something about the label reminds me of another brewery. And I tried to think of it, couldn't think of it. Just started mentioning it again, couldn't think of it. All of a sudden, it jumped in my head. I think Hermit Thrush is the vibe I'm getting. So, whether I'm right or wrong, that's the brewery that popped in my head. So I dig on the label. Beer, guess what? We have clear beer. That's pretty exciting, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a 6 and change IPA, that, my friends, is old school clear beer. You could soft, subtle haze that you would get normally from a craft brewery that can't filter the living crap out of their beers. And you're talking about this nice kind of soapy white kind of head. It just reminds me of classic like West Coast kind of IPA. So, yeah, it's good nose. Classic East Coast IPA, and by East Coast I mean New England. I mean like classic East Coast, where it doesn't have that huge resinous characteristic. It definitely leans more in a citrus fruity realm, but in an old school kind of hopping way. It doesn't come off as this juicy kind of orange. It's very much kind of orange marmalade-y. That's the way kind of like old school kind of orange used to show up in a lot of different beers. So you got a sweeter malt, kind of two-row into crystal malty kind of vibe, and then you have this nice kind of orange. Think like orange cleaner, like the orange cleaner you use for your hands. Again, it doesn't smell like a chemical like that, but it's that kind of orange. It's a little spritzy, kind of perfumey kind of orange, as opposed to like a straight ring out kind of fruit juice kind of orange. Done and done. It smells like it's gonna be sweet with a nice bittering, but also just be hyper crisp and clean. Kind of what we're looking for. Let's dive in. Cheers, all. Yeah, that's effing delicious. That's really, really tasty. Good God. Oh. It's reminding me again, not to keep stealing Oddbird's thunder, but it's reminding me of a beer, and I don't know what it is. So first things first, it is a showcase of combination of malt and hops in unison here, because it has this very fragrant floral kind of orange citrus to it, with a decent bittering. Like, it's not like a resinous bittering. It's not a piney West Coastiness. It's a sturdy, like bistro weed kind of bittering, but it's needed because the malt portion of the show, which is equal to the hop portion of the show here, it's not overly sweet by any stretch of imagination, but sweet enough. And if that bittering wasn't there, I think it would be just a little bit too one note, or a little bit too pushed off in that sweet direction. But the malt part of it is fantastic. I'm not kind of being like, I wish it was a little tempered or anything like that. No. It is that combination of that beefier, sweeter kind of maltiness. Again, I'm thinking like two-row into even like, if you could talk me into a touch of honey malt or something like that, a little bit kind of sweeterness into it, something along those lines, I could definitely buy into that. But when you add that kind of hoppiness on there, what definitely has to have some kind of old school combination of C's in here. There's Chinook or Centennial kind of thing going on along with the Citra to do this old school kind of fruitiness with this nice kind of old school kind of bitterness, but then not have that big West Coast kind of resonance. I think a lot of people drink this and think, oh, probably a West Coast IPA. To me, this is very much like old school East Coast IPA. When I say that, I'm talking like 90s, the aughts kind of East Coast IPA, not New England style IPA. This is like Heady, pre-Alchemist, pre-Fiddlehead. It has that kind of balance between, or showiness is probably a better way, because there's a balance to it, but it's the way the hop show and the way the malt shows is very much that kind of time period. Infinitely well made. Like, there's zero negativity to this beer. There's nothing, and I want to preface or accentuate, I think that's the word I'm looking for. There's nothing negative here, but there is absolutely nowhere to hide that negative if it were existing in this beer. This beer is canned on 6/6. What does it say on the bottom here? It says, seek joy and be kind. We love the kind words. There's nothing negative here. And if there was, it would be up front and center. Because that's the thing about these kind of beers. And that's the thing about, new school beers. I'm not trashing or talking negative about new school hazies. I love them. I think they drink fantastic. But there's room. There's definitely room for to be off and still be very, very, very tasty. Let's do this. We'll go. So if you like my reviews to be quick and stuff, which they never are, but you hate when they go on tangents and get really long, we're gonna do that right now. So, building out the studio, it had a couple different things for me. It's very much, I needed a space for myself to work. I have a normal 9-to-5 job, but I work from home quite a bit, and then I do a lot of stuff outside of it, whether it be beer review stuff or a bunch of different stuff. Big kind of reasoning behind me doing this is music. I love music. I just turn the camera a little bit. You probably can't see all the stuff, but there's some synthesizers here, mixing board. I have, my turntables are over there. I'm a DJ. It's been a while since I've done a lot of DJing, and when I say DJing, we'll get into that in a second, but, it was a reason for me to be loud again. I can actually, out here in the middle of nowhere, on my farm, away from the house, I can close my windows and I can bang. And I'm a vinyl guy. When I did weird electronic music / techno music in the 90s and the 2000s, you mix vinyl, and it's very challenging. Not just to mix vinyl, but do it in a concise and precise and a very clean way. If you don't know the ins and outs, I'm not going to get into that, but a lot of people couldn't do it. A lot of people couldn't do it because they couldn't beat match, is basically what I'm trying to say. And once you started to get in the 2000s, eking closer, it kind of mirrors beer, and that's why I'm talking about this. A lot of digital formats started to come up, and most specifically Serato and Tractor. And what those did is basically, those gave you the ability to mix MP3s in a DJ format. It wasn't like you're sitting there and, on a computer doing it. You're still manipulating what looks like records, but they're actually playing an MP3 on something else. Well, one of the things that came with that is what's called auto beat matching, which is you load up the files and it matches the pace of both records, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. You just have to work about making things sound good and look good. I hate that. I really do. I think the art of DJing, I think beat matching is the soul and the core of that. So it kind of put me off. It kind of made me kind of like get a little bit salty when I came to a lot of new school DJs. And, I actually lost friends over it, to be perfectly honest with you, because, there was friends of mine that were like, we'd practice weeks for a gig. And, there's people that I knew, people I lived with, that they could practice for months and they could never pull it off. They would just, do an hour set, which is typical. They get 30 minutes in, they'd hit a train wreck. They'd bring themselves out of it and get back in their groove, but they can never go, 60, 90, 120 minutes without fucking up. All this digital stuff comes out. They can go for 5 hours without fucking up. They can do it for the 10 years with their friends. But now in digital, and they're like, oh, that's digital's the way of the new world. You're just being a curmudgeon. Be like, no, you fucking suck. You just can't do that part, so now you're changing your shit. Anyway, that's kind of the way these beers kind of work when it comes to, like, New School Hazies. And, like, they're just, like, New School Hazies, it's this Serato and Tractor. It's the auto-tune of beer. Does that make it horrible? As a beer drinker, no. As a beer producer, I could see myself getting very, very irritated at that, especially if I could do this. But I still enjoy them as a beer drinker. I'm not a brewer. So that's kind of where that disconnect comes in. It's very, very convenient for me to be, very much against that one thing, but totally okay with the other. But that's where this beer kind of lies for me, is that this is a straight up 21200s, a mixer, no beat matching. You're doing everything on your own, and it is on point. You know what I mean? It is fluid. It is precise. If I'm off, I'm off. You hear it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now, sure, you're going to have that from time to time. Everybody messes up. Nobody's perfect. But this is pretty damn close. When it comes to, like, an IPA out of the New School ilk, I think that's pretty special. I really do. And I'm glad I got to try it. Thank you very much, Keith. Yeah, I mean, bursting at seams with that old school citrus, very much kind of old school leaning malt base, C-hopped, letting that bitterness play a part, letting the malt play a part, letting those hops play a part, letting that fruitiness play a part, but in a very purposeful and precise, surgical kind of manner. Oh, absolutely delicious. I don't honestly know what I'm going to say. Is this one of the better IPAs I've had as late? Yes. Not much status. Let's put it that way. Now, take that for what your... Actually, I shouldn't even say that. I was going to be like, take that for what your likes are. This is how I like things, so I shouldn't have to explain myself, but when I say IPA, people automatically default to New England style IPA, and that's what I'm referencing. If I put it in all IPAs, it's probably still Mount Rushmore status, but it's very much a distinct difference from a New England style IPA. Even an old school New England style, like, this is very much different than Heady, very much different than Sip of Sun. The roots are quite a bit similar, but it's quite a bit more classical, quite a bit more traditional, but that doesn't make it boring or less tasty, at least in this guy's eyes. So, yes, IPAs. Valuability, brewery only. Keep telling me what you paid and leave you with it if you like what you like this. If you like IPAs. And I say that because I guess that's the truth. I shouldn't really be walking back that conversation on these, because I'm not saying if you like New England IPAs, if you like West Coast IPAs. I said if you like IPA, because if you like IPA, you'll like this. If you drink this and you say you like IPAs, but you don't like this, you don't like IPAs. You either like New England IPAs, or, you know what I mean, lactose IPAs, or West Coast, you know what I mean? This is IPA. This is, well, quite a bit different beer. This is, you know what I mean, like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. That's what this beer is existing, orbiting around, as opposed to the New School. So if you dig those beers, you'll dig this. Oddbird, have you been to the brewery? Have you had this beer? Have you had it recently? Have you had this batch? All that fun stuff down there. There you go. A 16-minute review with a tangent in the middle about playing records and the future. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully enjoying some good beer right now. Hopefully next time. Cheers, y'all.